Hi, everyone. Starting with the most common question these days, can you hear me? We have a chat on your right side where you can leave a comment and tell me if we... Cool. Okay. I think we can start now. I started with, with the most common question these days, but we are getting used to. And also, this is the first time I expand a banner at home, as you can see. So given the world pandemic, we're doing everything we can to support and maintain the local community by organizing local and completely online events. I'm very glad to welcome you to the third ever ProductTank Sofia online event. First of all, let me introduce ProductTank Sofia as we do it in our physical events. ProductTank Sofia is the largest product management community in Bulgaria so far. We organize monthly events, different types of gatherings, and spreading information about product management practices, and also support the local ecosystem by presenting local actors. Also, it's an informal meetup, and we usually do about 20-25 different activities through the year. ProductTank as an organization was established 10 years ago. ProductTank Sofia was founded 5 years ago by Diane and Maria. If you attend our events, you know them perfectly. And here are the organizers in Sofia. As I said, Maria and Diro are the founders, and I have the great opportunity to be your host tonight. The events are unique. They're run by product managers, to product managers, and in an informal and friendly way where we share information, grab some beers, and simply talk about product management and different hot topics. Our past speakers came from different companies with different backgrounds. You can see a short list on the slide over here. Of course, the community. We have a Facebook group, and I can say that this is the biggest product management community Facebook group in Bulgaria. Please join. Also join our meetup page. And you can find a lot of resources on the Mind the Products blogs, and also this channel. If you click on the profile below, Mind the Product, you explore a lot of resources on the YouTube channel. Of course, the annual conferences, Mind the Product conferences, or MTP, they're very important for the community. Okay, so the local Facebook group, please join. It's even growing. Search for ProductTank Sofia community. Our topic and the guest tonight. Please welcome John Kundert. He's Chief Product Officer at the Financial Times. He leads FT's product organization. It's 80 people, and he's responsible for leading the product strategy across the FT group. He has a rich experience in data-driven product management. Also, prior to his current role, he was the Chief Technology Officer at the Financial Times. And his colleague, Momchil Marinov, who is Director of Product at Financial Times. He joined FT in 2018, and in the current role, he's responsible for setting the product direction for FT Core and FT's Acquire mission. A big part of his experience is using data and B2B products. He used to be a head of products at Experian. We have wonderful, very experienced product executives join us tonight. And given the fact we're completely online, let's keep the community spirit. Please leave your comments in the chat section below. It's actually on your right side. All comments are highly appreciated and will be taken during the conversation with our great speakers. Of course, the topic, why the Financial Times changed its North Star metric to lifetime value. Why the guiding light for Financial Times is this particular metric, lifetime value. Let me introduce you, John and Momchil. Hello, guys.
Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Glad having you tonight. You can present your screen in order to proceed to your part.
Yeah, just a second. Okay. Am I sharing? Can you see it?
Yeah, we can see. The floor is yours.
Okay, so John will start and then I'll present the second half of the presentation.
Okay.
I think John is reconnecting.
Can you all see me?
Yeah, absolutely, and we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Boris. I'd first of all like to apologise for that loss of connection. I also want to apologise for my terrible haircut. Well, in fact, lack of a haircut. We're still locked down here in Brighton, UK, which meant whatever haircut I have, I've had to do myself, and I'm not very proud of it. But enough about haircuts and connections. Let's talk about lifetime value and the FT. I thought it useful just to start off with an introduction to the FT being the Financial Times. Momchil, do you want to move to the first slide? So we are a well-established organisation. We're 130 plus years old. As an organisation, we're probably best known as a pink newspaper. But for the last few years, we've been busy transforming ourselves. And there's two key transformations which are worth highlighting. One is our move from advertising to paid-for content. Paid-for content meaning, in this context, a subscription-based model where customers, digital customers in particular, need to pay to get hold of our journalism. We've also, as an organisation, moved our revenues away from print to digital. So now the majority of FT revenues are all digital revenues. And that's been a really big change. Last year was iconic for us. We actually achieved 1 million plus subscribers, and we're really confident we actually have the core of a great growth strategy driving BFT forward over the coming years. Next slide. As part of that journey, we've spent a lot of time thinking about how we do product development, but also where. And I was really proud to be part of a team which concluded in a decision to come to Sofia. So we have an amazing organisation already with amazing offices. At some point, you should all come and hang out at our offices because they are phenomenal. We also, alongside those offices, have great talent. Momchil, who is talking today, is our first product director in a product development centre in Bulgaria, augmented by a product development capability in London. It's really fantastic to be in Sofia. And I truly look forward to the point where I can get on a plane and visit again. Next slide, Momchil. So a bit about our journey. We are very proud of our data-driven approach to our digital transformation. And I think it's worth recognizing that we've evolved over time. When we started with ft.com, we did very much start with a traffic-based view. So the initial metric which we used was probably the same one many organizations start with, which is just getting people to the website. That translates into page views. Page views was a currency within the organization, and senior management would have reports which reported on page views as our metric. But we realized after establishing a reasonable audience through page views that we needed to move to understand whether there was quality inside those page views. You've got a very different business if people come, visit a page, and you never see them again, to people coming time and time again. People coming time and time again kind of suggested there was quality in that audience, and it's easier to monetize quality, particularly as you move towards a subscription-based model, than it is for one where there isn't. So we moved to something which was underpinned by a metric which felt like a quality visit metric. That kind of became our North Star, although we didn't call it a North Star at that point in time. That led us into our subscription business. But from there, we realized that quality visit wasn't quite enough. We needed to begin to understand not of the quality of the audience coming to the site in order to get them to subscribe, but engagement overall. Because a part of a trick with any subscription model is understanding the engagement of your existing base as well as the engagement of those who are yet to subscribe. So through that journey of page views to quality visits to an engagement metric, which we called recency, frequency, value, we achieved what is a real milestone of 1 million paying subscribers. But we knew that we had to change. Next slide. So you thought, coming here, you just listened to Momchil and I talk. I'm actually going to ask you to do a little bit of work, 60 seconds of work. It's a little quiz just to get our minds going. Next slide. Okay, so mental arithmetic. This is a fictitious subscription businesses. There's many of them out there. In this subscription business, I want you to imagine you are the CEO. You have already achieved 250,000 subscribers, and you want to get to 500,000 subscribers in 5 years. You're not going to play around with a price. That's going to be fixed. You do know that you will acquire, and you can acquire, 125,000 subscribers each year. So over those 5 years, an incremental 125,000 new subscribers every year. Of those new subscribers, 50%, which feels like a reasonable punt, a reasonable guess, 50% will renew in the first year, and 75% of those subscribers who renew in their first year will go on to renew every year thereafter. So, what do you have at the end? Next slide. So the question which I pose to you is, after that subscription business has traveled 5 years, given those numbers, what do you think we end up with at the end of the 5 years? And there's 3 options which I'm giving you. Option A is it's doubled in size. That's awesome. That's what we're trying to do, get to 500,000. Option B, we're nearly there. We got in fact halfway there, 50%. Or is there something else? Is there another option? So I'm going to give you 60 seconds. If you can post your comments in YouTube with your thinking, and then we'll come to the answer. So no pressure, we're at 25 seconds. Any guesses yet? We're at 40 seconds. Anyone want to be brave and have a guess? Okay, I think that's time up. So the answer is, next slide, we're exactly the same. It feels like a phenomenal business. It feels like progress, but we've lost all those subscribers. We've lost as many subscribers as we've achieved. And that problem gets bigger as our subscription base grows. Percentage-wise, a smaller percentage of churn, so people cancelling, requires a meaningful effort to recoup those lost subscribers year on year. Next slide. So what does all of that tell us? So first of all, we know, certainly within the FT, there are natural price ceilings. You can't just carry on increasing your price to grow. We also know there's natural limits on our ability to acquire. There aren't huge audiences undiscovered inside the globe, who inside this world, which wants to subscribe to the FT. And the higher the base, the higher the actual absolute number of people who cancel, even with steady retention rates. We also know inside this environment, the competition is there. Many businesses now are subscription businesses. Next slide. So all of this has led the FT to talk about and nominate lifetime value as its new metric. Lifetime value talks about the value which has been earned from customers, but it also talks about the value which we expect to get in the future. So that's using all the intelligence we have with all our data science and machine learning to come up with a predictive guess of what the lifetime value is for any customer. And it's critically important for Momchil, because Momchil, as the product director for our acquisition mission, needs to be really smart in who he acquires. The business and I am not interested in acquiring a lot of people who cancel very quickly. We will only win, and win big, if Momchil manages to acquire people and secure the right behaviors to drive lifetime value to its maximum. So that feels like the right point to hand over to Momchil. Momchil, do you want to tell our story from this point on?
Yep. Thank you, John. First, can you hear me? I hope that's yes. So, hi everyone. My name is Joe Moreno. I'm product director for FT Core and Acquire Mission at the FT, based in Sofia, Bulgaria. Great to be here, albeit remotely and online. And I hope what John and I are sharing tonight will be useful for the growing product management community in Bulgaria. So I will talk about three aspects of focusing on LTV, following on what John already shared. The first one, lifetime value in the context of acquisition, what this means, what are some of the areas we have been exploring. Second one is about evaluating opportunities. And the third one, what changing our focus to LTV meant for product managers within the FT. So this is LTV at a glance, a nice visual representation created by our data science team that I really like. I think it's quite simple. So essentially the way we think about it is it breaks down into two periods. One is between the time a user or subscriber joins and today, which is already earned value, and then the other one is between today and when they leave. So considering the period between when they joined and today is already in the past, there isn't really much we can do about it. There is, however, a lot we can do about the period between today and when they leave to extend it, to extend the tenure of a reader, of a subscriber with us by creating more value for them and thus increasing the residual lifetime value. So on the surface, this looks like retention problem. So we already have a subscriber. What can we do to keep them, to retain them as a subscriber? We wanted, however, to take a look at what this means from an acquisition perspective as well. As John mentioned, it's important to know who the people are that join us as subscribers and who we acquire as subscribers so that they can stay longer with us. So what does lifetime value? And value essentially means at this early point prior to the user joining and immediately after that. So just to clarify the FT, when we talk about acquisition, this also includes activation, which is the early period immediately after a subscriber joins the FT. So we started looking into who the people are who read the FT. There are millions of anonymous readers who read the FT every month, coming from different places like Google search or social media. Why are they coming to the FT? What's the value that they see at the FT and they get from reading and engaging with FT's content? Can we identify the people who are more likely to have a higher lifetime value and stay with us for a longer period of time this early on? And can we take them on a journey of becoming subscribers? So the second part, I guess, to that is activating. We know, I'm sure most of us here have been in a situation where we are subscribed to something. It could be an online service or something as simple as a gym membership that we just keep paying, and month after month we're wondering why we keep paying it as we're not using it, and sooner rather than later we decide to stop to cancel the subscription and stop paying. So this is a situation that we don't want to put our subscribers in at the FT. We know that significant percentage of new users do not return after their first visit or after first week. So it's important to create a value loop pretty much immediately when someone joins to make sure that they experience the value proposition straight away. This is just a nice diagram from our customer research team that depicts the value loop. So this kind of way of thinking then leads us into specific product developments, new features that we can look into, or improving existing features and capabilities. So anonymous readers, what's the best next step for them? How can we take them on this journey that I mentioned to becoming subscribers? For example, by offering a registration model. Sign up is an area that we can improve significantly at the FT, and it's an area that creates friction for many readers or potential subscribers. Login is also a friction area, not just at the FT, but just to give you a sense of the size of the opportunity here, we estimate that between 40 and 55,000, there are between 40 and 55,000 failed login attempts at the FT per week. So these are people who want to read and engage with our content and cannot for one reason or another. And in a lot of cases, it's something trivial as people forgetting their passwords. Discovering content is another area. So this could be either by search, improving search, so that early on someone can immediately find content that's relevant for them, or offering personalized recommendations. And new content formats is also one more thing that has been, I think, particularly important in recent months, as our editorial team have been trying and experimenting a lot to understand what the format is that is most engaging for the new audience coming in to read about coronavirus and its impact on business and society. So just an example of how the perception and the point of view changes if we look at things from an engagement point of view. So using RFV that John talked about, our, I guess, previous North Star metric, versus how versus what the point of view is when we use lifetime value. So if we take graduate students as an example, so the FT is available at many universities around the world due to the effort of our B2B team who have been establishing these relationships over many years. So if we take a look at these graduate students from an engagement perspective, we may want to make sure that they read more, that they have access and find relevant content. So this leads us to finding content faster, finding more relevant content, more content generally. And in terms of product development, this may mean improving search or content recommendations, for example. When we take a look at this from a lifetime value perspective, and lifetime value is very much dependent on the duration of the customer's stay with us, so their tenure. So it immediately becomes quite clear that in 1 or 2 years, the graduate students will graduate and they will leave university. And this is where our relationship with them may end up prematurely. So this having a significant negative impact on potential lifetime value. And this is essentially what changes our perspective here. So rather than starting to think as finding content faster, we start to think what happens when someone graduates. How can we ensure that they have continuing access, and can we build a compelling transition journey for them after graduation? I think some of this probably shows the number of different opportunities that are available to us when we think about these problems. And one thing we wanted to make sure at the FT as we switched to or changed our approach to make a lifetime value, our North Star metric is to ensure that we evaluate opportunities by putting lifetime value at the center. So we wanted to come up with a approach and a process that everyone can use. Previously, of course, we did validations, risk mitigation in different forms. Different teams used to take different approaches, essentially. But we wanted to again roll out a consistent process to everyone. So we had a small team from the product organization get together, spend some time to figure out what kind of process can we use. I'm sure most of us have been in a situation where we say, this looks like, or this sounds, or this seems like a great product idea or a great feature, without necessarily thinking about what's the value of the thing we have in mind or why someone used it in the first place. So we wanted really to have a very rigorous approach, starting by understanding what the problem and the opportunity is. That's why we have, as a first stage, understand. And this is a phase during which we gather information about a particular problem. Is there any opportunity there at all? Then we go into developing hypotheses. How can we address this opportunity? Then generating ideas, and we go into design and running experiments. We are trying to do this as fast and lean, I guess, as possible. So, for example, in design and run experiments, what we will do is we may create just a paper prototype that we present to 10 readers as in interviews to get a sense of their reaction. And this may result in us not having to actually build anything or launch anything to the website to get input and feedback, essentially, or data from thousands of readers. So ultimately, the ideas that go through this cycle, this loop, successfully go into delivery. And then the ones that do not make it, we decide to stop working on. We don't just throw them away. We keep these learnings, and they then feed into further discovery projects. So just to give you an example of something we did recently, our activation team started with a simple and vague enough, I guess, idea of there seemed to be a group of people who read content in short bursts of time. So hence snacking and snackable behavior, snackable content. So they started with asking the questions, can we learn more about this type of reading? Why are people doing it? Who are the people who do it? Is there something we can take from there that we can apply elsewhere, particularly for the purposes of activation? And the learning that emerged from as a result of the understand phase was, yes, there is definitely such behavior, and people read this, and in bursts of between 5 and 15 minutes, they read more than other comparable groups per visit, so more articles, for example. There are prominent spikes in the early morning commute and around lunchtime, which I guess is to be expected. And these users are mostly on their using the apps on their mobile devices. And generally, ultimately, this is a group of readers who are already engaged. So based on these findings, the team determined that from an activation perspective specifically, this is not the biggest opportunity they can focus on, considering that this is a group of readers who are already engaged. So they decided to stop it there. So the outcomes, just want to highlight, this is still very valuable learning. It saved resources, so we didn't have to develop anything, no development at all. It freed the team to focus on other bigger opportunities. And then this learning is actually going to be taken by the retention team, who can potentially build something if it proves to be valuable. So one final thing the third point I wanted to share is what this essentially meant for product managers, particularly if the product managers FT Core in the FT Core team here in Sofia, but also elsewhere as well. So just to give a sense of the transition and the change on a daily basis that took place for them. So from products and services for internal teams, the team focused on end products for our end users. And from working with very well-established product development teams, product managers had to focus on areas that were with pretty much non-existent teams, and actually work and take a very active role and participation in building those teams. So it's a difficult situation to be in. This kind of transition still continues. It's far from a comfort zone, I think, for anyone. But it also creates a lot of opportunities. Just wanted to share this, as there might be other people in the community or other companies that are going through similar transitions. So I asked the team actually to share their feedback on this transition and what they think now that we are kind of a few months further down, although still in transitioning. So these are some of the quotes I got from them. You can read them, but essentially a few, if I can highlight a few, working together with stakeholders. So essentially we shifted from taking requests from our stakeholders to working together with stakeholders as a team on identifying and exploring opportunities and then potentially building products and features to address them. Revolutionizing, strong words here, the product management function, and focusing again on opportunities rather than just developing features. And there are challenges as well. People have to catch up. There is a learning curve. And there is one quote which I also like about mission-focused product manager being the product management equivalent of a full-stack developer, with all its joys and challenges. So these are the three things I wanted to share. Hope what John and I talked about is useful, and we are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, John and Momchil. Pretty good point to start with questions. While we wait for the participants to ask any questions, I can start with the first one. Actually, what are the concrete actions a startup or product team should take in order to start using lifetime value properly as a metric and as something given the right direction, something serving as a guideline?
Momchil, do you want to take this or shall I?
Yeah, I can try to answer this one. I think first, it's important. This was probably quite visible from one of the slides that John shared, to understand where the company or team is at their, at which point of their journey they are. So lifetime value, I think, is a useful metric at any stage of the company, but it may not always be the useful as the North Star metric. For example, if your main objective is growing your user base, you may want to focus on, daily active users, monthly active users, conversion rates. In this case, LTV would be like a secondary metric. I think in terms of concrete actions and steps that teams can take, just lifetime value is fairly, common and well, I guess, accepted metric in many industries. So just probably start with its generic version. You need to understand your business really well in order to then kind of customize LTV to suit your particular case. So just in our situation, this is still a process that we are still going through, customizing LTV for our particular needs. And it could be different for our different cohorts of subscribers, for example. But also with in the case of engagement and RV, in the time when it used to be our North Star metric, engagement is also something that many companies measure, but RFV is a very much FT specific metric, and the reason is exactly that, because you start with something that may be very generic, but then you need to modify it to fit your particular needs.
Yeah, so I agree with all of that. I will say, when I look back at those steps which I talked through, I think if we had chosen LTV at the wrong point in that journey, it would have been suboptimal. What would have been more optimal is, as we were going through that journey, recognizing those steps and being more aware of LTV as a destination which we would need to get to. So my counsel to everyone who's thinking about this is like any maturity matrix. You don't jump straight to the end game. You have to go through the steps which are right for you as an organization. But as with most disciplines and most maturity metrics and matrices, being aware of them is the key, because then you can navigate that journey internally effectively.
Having said that, if you go back in time, is there something you would like to change, or some aspect of the implementation you would let's say do differently?
So I if I could go back, I would have liked LTV to be a metric which we understood but was not our North Star, and then recognize the point where we would change RFV, which was our previous North Star, to LTV. So it's not a binary switch, which it kind of became. We had no LTV, and then we had LTV. So I would have run those in parallel, with RFV being our primary North Star, and then LTV kind of getting closer to it until it eventually became a North Star. I think the other thing which I would have done differently is probably invest more in the quality of a metric early on, because we recognized LTV became a necessity, but we didn't have the data or the data science to build it. So we then had a big pause for 6 months going, our North Star is LTV, but how do we calculate LTV? So I think thinking about it more strategically early on would have allowed us to adopt it and allowed us to embed it in the team in a smoother and less disruptive way.
We can continue with some questions from the audience. We have a question from Maria. Can you give an example of what an experiment that really moved the needle?
Yeah, I guess really move the needle could mean a number of different things. Again, considering that we are fairly early in our journey. There haven't been experiments that have revolutionized what we are doing. And to be fair, this is not what we've been after. The FT is a very well-established organization. We are not really a startup, so we know well what our value proposition is, what our mission is, etc. So I would say the example I gave with the students, this is an area that is still going through discovery, but we already know that it has a very significant lifetime value opportunity. So this is something I think we're all looking forward to.
Yeah, I would add to that. So we're a mature product and a mature organization. So I think we're unlikely to find the thing which really moved the needle. But what we are finding is, I think, increasing focus on things which move a needle. And when you add all those things together, that represents a 20, 30, 40 million pound opportunity in itself. So my two kind of favorite ones right now on the roadmap, which we're currently looking at, one is right at the heart of the Acquire mission, which is frictionless login. We have so many customers who come to FT, they try to log in, they forget their password, they want the value which we offer, but there's a barrier to them getting to that value proposition. And I think that could be massively significant in terms of LTV and the value which we give it. The other one, which is not actually in the Acquire mission, but it's in our Retain mission, is one using machine learning and personalization to create a more relevant experience for the FT. So we've seen some promise in this space, and we've seen meaningful uplift to a very particular audience, and it's a laser guided missile. So we haven't seen personalization across the board give an uplift to everyone, but these very focused personalizations on people who are just below the LTV threshold we want, and are very hard to get above the LTV threshold we want. We've seen targeted personalization tests which have shown that we can move these people over. And if we can actually scale that, it suggests a very big opportunity to recognize. So that is very exciting for us.
Thank you. Let's continue to the next question from Mina. This is, when measuring LTV, do you take into account cost of acquisition? Have you considered including a possible reactivation and return lifecycle phase after a user leaves?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. If I can start with the second part, we have considered, and we have this phase, so it's actually also part of our Acquire mission. It includes the initial activation of readers, but also reactivation and return when someone becomes disengaged, for example. They don't necessarily have to stop being a subscriber. So these are potentially completely different groups of people, but some of the activation techniques may work across both of them. So that's why we treat them both as part of our Acquire mission. When measuring LTV, do you take into account cost of acquisition? We take into account cost of acquisition, but we're not using LTV just as a threshold for our cost of acquisition spend, right? So it's not just a way to determine how much we should be spending on acquiring customers. I think LTV at the FT is quite more than that. It's again a way for us to measure how successful are we in establishing longer term relationships and keeping people with us for longer.
Carlo is asking, other than the LTV, North Star metrics, would you consider any other metrics related to quality enhancement, as diversifying the content and targeting more expertise audience, not graduate students? This is something I also wanted to ask
Yeah, so I'll start, and Momchil can then correct me when I misspeak. So we have a number of metrics which we use, but importantly, LTV is the unifying North Star which brings them all together. So as I said before, we continue to use recency, frequency, value as a quality metric in its own right. We also have a number of metrics which talk to the intelligence we have about the customer to drive lifetime value. For example, the teams have recently devised a new metric to understand the breadth of reading. So how many different types of content are people reading? Because we have evidence that breadth of reading is a driver of engagement, which is a driver of LTV, which I think partly answers your question. Momchil, do you have more you want to add?
Not really, if I understand the question correctly. Yeah, we use a number of other metrics as well. Again, LTV is like the main one, but we use it in conjunction with a number of other. So RV and also quality reads are still metrics that we very much use on a day-to-day basis.
Talking about metrics, how do you mitigate risk of bad metrics that can lead you to wrong decisions? This is something not connected to LTV in particular, but more to your professional practice.
So again, I think if I lead one shot, then you can add the detail. So it is a really, really good question. So if your data quality is poor or your metrics are not trusted, it will paralyze an organization. Even worse, organizations which learn something which proves to be false find it very hard to unlearn those things. So it is really important we get them right. On just a third point for the FT particularly, some metrics support the B2B billing model. So we will say to B2B customers, your account has had this much engagement, and these customers, these people, these employees have used this much of our product. And the bank or the customer of B2B can turn around and say, prove it. I don't believe it. So we have invested very heavily in building up the trust and essentially the data quality, which then leads to the trust and puts currency into those metrics to allow those decisions. And it is a really, really painful exercise because it's a meaningful investment which doesn't have a direct correlation with revenue. It has a correlation, I think, more with strategy, which then leads to revenue. Momchil, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I think just from my perspective, it's the metric or metrics and then the data. So you have to get both of these right, and it's a difficult thing to achieve, and it takes time. So you have to keep improving. You start from somewhere, but you just have to work on both of them. Is this metric actually measuring what we want it to measure? And we have the right data for this, even if the metric is right.
Yeah.
So both of these are quite difficult.
Yeah, and we take it serious enough where some of our metrics are audited by third parties. And in a recent audit, out of a large data set, they found 50 entities which had the wrong metrics associated to them. 50 out of many, many, many hundreds of thousands. But that's the level of scrutiny which we put in to give us confidence in those metrics.
One more question from the live chat from Radost. She is asking, have you adopted this metric to B2B users? Have you considered smoother transition from personal to enterprise user accounts and vice versa?
Momchil.
Yeah, so there are probably two aspects. So there are B2B users, but there are also B2B accounts. Both of them have certain lifetime value. and we try to account for both, right? So a B2B customer, which is an organization, has certain lifetime value for us, and it's maybe driven by different factors than what an individual account, an individual user lifetime value is. We have considered, so John mentioned this in the answer to the previous question, how we essentially measure engagement for B2B accounts. In terms of people transitioning from personal to enterprise and vice versa, yeah, it's a very good question. The education piece is an example for that, but there are many others, and this happens all the time. So someone joins as an individual B2C subscriber, and then they start a new job, and the company has a FT subscription, so they join the company license. This is an area that we are actively working on to be able to essentially understand these transitions better and have a better assessment of lifetime value as people move from B2B to B2C and vice versa.
So I think one of our aspirations is we almost become your companion through your life. So as a student, you start to read and subscribe. You finish your academic life and maybe you go on holiday, but we give you a proposition which allows you to stay engaged with the FT. You then are looking for a job and you use the FT to help you find that job or prepare for it. You then get a job and you join a B2B subscription. You then leave to go on your world tour because you're in the middle of a midlife crisis. You then come back to work and your subscription is still there. You use it to achieve your ambition to become CEO of a global organization. And then finally you retire and you still want to read the FT because it's got great arts and weekend content, and because you want to stay connected to your community. And I think that talks to kind of how we kind of uber vision which LTV lends itself towards.
I think that we can wait for one last question. I can do it by myself also. I would like to ask you to share one significant decision which is taken upon the data, or which is based on the data on the LTV.
In what sense? Decision to build a product, for example?
Decision to answer some circumstances or just improve the product.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just maybe to take a bit of a step back, but I guess based on LTV and our belief as an organization in using this as our North Star metric, we did a lot of reorganization in the company. So that's a very significant decision in itself. I think apart from that, we make a decision based on LTV all the time. So in the acquire mission, this is our driving factor as we are, setting our priorities and our objectives on what we should be working on. There are a number of areas that a number of decisions that we made. So again, education, login. These are just a couple of examples.
So I think it's a good point about how we're all organized internally. And I think for this audience, I don't want to overcomplicate that, but we have so all organizations have characteristics which lend themselves to certain behaviors. And within BFT, there's complexity because our revenue and our organizational structures have almost competing interests. So we have B2C, we have B2B, and they're both trying to secure customers to grow. We have editorial. So our editorial mission is to hold power to account without fear or favour. So their default is everything should be free. And then you have advertising. So advertising want to know who the customer is, so they don't want everything to be free, but they probably would prefer more traffic at the cost of less subscription revenue. So you have these different businesses inside our model at the moment. What LTV is doing is allow us not to optimize for any one of those businesses, but to optimize for the lifetime value of the individual customer. So it helps us think about not how do we grow B2B or how do we grow B2C, but how do we grow LTV? And that makes Momchil's job massively easier, because it empowers him to lead those organizations to that point. And that's enormous. And that's an enormous win inside the FT. I cannot overemphasize how important it is and how fundamental it is in terms of moving product away from doing a wish list for B2B and B2C, as opposed to an empowered mission driving lifetime value, irrespective of whether that's coming from advertising or B2B or B2C.
Thank you very much, guys. I can't see any new comments or questions to you now. Any final words? Why do you sell TV? You answered this question basically several times, but can you please wrap up in one sentence?
I would say understand how LTV can be used as your organization matures, grows, and scales. That would be my counsel. I really wouldn't advocate everybody adopts it right now, but start to embrace it and understand it. So when your organization is at the right point in its journey, it can integrate that into its own thinking and it eventually becoming its North Star metric. That would be my counsel.
Yeah, I would just add also that, don't use LTV just as, again, a threshold for your customer acquisition costs. It should be something that guides, as we know, this is our ambition at the FT, our, longer term, the ability to build longer term relationship with our audience and our subscribers.
Once more, thank you very much for having you tonight. It was great pleasure.
Thank you, Boris.
Thank you very much, Boris. Thanks for having us here. Hope this was useful for the community, and we are looking forward, I think, to contribute more to the growing community in Bulgaria.
Yeah, we'll meet together in a physical event in order to do some web networking with the community.
Yes, and I, on behalf of the FT, I would like to extend that invitation. And when we're all out of lockdown, it would be a pleasure to host you all.
Yeah. Pleasure for us to join you. Thank you very, very much again. Stay safe, stay healthy, and everything will be good.
That's right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.